Hi, Dr. Emily Bennett here, naturopathic doctor and PCOS expert. Today I want to talk to you about how getting a diagnosis of PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome can actually be a good thing. I speak from experience. In 2008, I said 2009 in my last video, but it was 2008, I got my diagnosis of PCOS, and it totally changed my life for the better in so many ways. It led me to see my first naturopathic doctor and eventually led me to kind of change my whole life course altogether and go to naturopathy school myself. No doubt it was scary too. You know, when I first received the diagnosis, I knew nothing about what was going on. And in actual fact, I hadn't even gone to the doctor with a complaint about something going on. I just went for a regular checkup, and then she noticed a few things that were going on with me, and she decided to send me for further testing and a visit with a gynecologist. And so it totally threw me for a loop. On top of that, I was prescribed a medication, which I almost immediately had a full body reaction to. My doctor had said I needed to be on it for the rest of my life unless I wanted to have babies. And so I didn't know what to do. I was having a terrible rash all over my body and heart palpitations, and it was scary. I had been lucky enough to have not taken many medications to that point, and I just really didn't know what to do. So when you get a diagnosis of PCOS or anything really, it makes sense to go through a period of panic, of anxiety, of grief, of confusion. You know, I remember asking myself questions like, how did this happen to me? Why me? What can I do about this? Am I destined to not be able to have kids? And you know, I was only 23. I was not even close to thinking about having children, but all of a sudden I was worrying about whether or not it would be possible. Would I get diabetes? Would I get heart disease? All of these things you read about online, I was panicking about whether they would happen to me. So when I finally emerged from that initial period of sadness and grief, I sort of jumped into an anxious mode of action. You know, searching online to try and find things that I could do to improve things, reading everything I could about PCOS, and there wasn't a lot available at that point, and I didn't find it very helpful. It mostly scared me more. When I finally connected with a practitioner, a naturopathic doctor in this case, who knew a lot about the sort of physiology of PCOS, what is actually going on in your body when this happens, how PCOS comes up when you have a susceptibility to the sort of hormonal imbalances that drive it. That's when I started to sort of like bring my energy back inside my body, feel a little bit more grounded, know that I wasn't doomed just because I had been given a diagnosis, and I felt capable of sort of learning from it, starting to learn from it. So I work with folks one-on-one all the time with PCOS, both in person and online. And I'll tell you that again and again, what I see is PCOS is an opportunity to deepen your relationship with your body, to get closer to making decisions based on how you're feeling, and to know that how you're feeling really tells you a lot about how your body's doing. And when you can be closely connected to that, you are more empowered to make the decisions that are right for you in that moment. And I love to kind of use how you're feeling as a way of informing sort of what the right decisions are for you, you know, around what to eat, how to move your body, when to go to sleep, how to spend your free time. You know, if you start practicing noticing how you're feeling and then making decisions based on that, you know when it makes sense to go to bed at 10 p.m., to, you know, eat a meal with lots of vegetables. But you also know when it feels okay to go out for dinner with your friends and have a couple drinks, or when you consciously decide, I'm going to stay up late tonight and watch this whole season of The Crown. Are other people watching The Crown? So the practice, the thing that I got out of my diagnosis and that I see my patients get out of their diagnoses all the time is this new ability, this new practice to engage with how you're feeling, to notice it, and then make your decision what to do in that moment based on how you're feeling. So the first tool that I found really helpful myself, and what I find to be really helpful for most of my clients and patients as well, is to start tracking things. And with PCOS, the thing that makes the most sense to start tracking right off the bat is your period. So if you get your period, you want to know, regardless of whether you're getting your period or whether it's not coming right now, which happens sometimes in PCOS. Some folks will find that they have huge amounts of time between periods. Some people will have just longer than regular amount of time between periods. And some people will get regular periods even though they have the diagnosis of PCOS. Regardless, if you have PCOS, I recommend that you download a period tracking app. Use whatever you'd like. I use Clue on my iPhone. In the past, I used, what was it called? View on my Android phone. But there are tons of them. Use whatever interface appeals the most to you. I think that mostly they have a lot in common to each other. Start off by tracking your period. So if you get a regular period, the first day of your period is considered to be the day that you bleed bright red blood. All the days prior to that, if you have brown spotting or breakthrough bleeding where you have a bit of spotting one day and then no bleeding for several days before your period starts, you want to track that in your calendar. But don't stop there. Track anything that you think of. The practice of tracking in this case is going to be the first step to deepening your relationship to noticing what's going on in your body. And periods are a very easy spot to start. So if you get your period, track your period. If you don't get your period, track something else. Do you still get breast or chest tenderness? Track that. There will be an option in the period tracker. If you get cramping, if you notice that you feel bloated, if you get a migraine around your period, if you have different sorts of cravings or desire different foods or increased fatigue, anything like that. Mood can be a super important one to track. Sleep is a fantastic one to track. So I'm not talking about writing a paragraph. I'm not talking about checking it obsessively. I'm just talking about remembering to make a note. So the apps are great because they'll have like a drop-down menu or just a button you can press where it says cramps today or I was feeling frustrated today versus you having to remember to write out a whole thing in your diary or whatever. So engage with that practice. With PCOS in particular, focusing on these symptoms that are related to hormonal dysregulation can help reveal your pattern, your personal pattern of dysregulation, both to you and then any practitioners you might work with in the future. You might want to consider tracking even your discharge all through the cycle. If you haven't, dived into the practice of tracking before, you might not know much about this. I don't know why it's not something we just learn in sex ed, but everybody who gets a period has discharge almost all through the cycle. So it looks vaguely something like this most of the time. If you have a regular 28 to 35 day cycle, or rather 25 to 35 day cycle, something like that, you're going to get your period at the beginning. It lasts for maybe 3 to 7 days. Then maybe you have a few sort of dry days where you're not seeing much discharge in your underwear or when you wipe. Then you're going to see something like a bit of sticky, creamy white discharge. It tends to get a little bit more watery as you head towards the middle of the month. Then you often go into this period of what is technically called egg white discharge. It's very slippery, it's very stretchy. It could stretch between your fingers. It's usually clear, maybe a bit whitish, and that's happening right around ovulation time. And so that's a really good one to look for. If you're seeing that sort of egg white discharge, that's a good indication that ovulation is probably happening, or at least the environment is right for ovulation. So if you're only going to track one other thing besides your period, look for that egg white discharge. After that, you might see things get watery again, sticky again, maybe a few dry days, and then you're at your period starting again at the beginning of a new cycle. So tracking is the first step to engaging with how you're feeling. Any other tools that you have that help you do that, tools of reflection. Of course, I know you've heard about mindfulness, but developing any kind of mindfulness practice can be useful to strengthen that tool in yourself. Of course, you can do things like guided meditation or a sitting meditation using an app. But I also want to encourage you to recognize that things that put you into sort of a sensory mode are also experiences of mindfulness. So if you want to just go for a walk in your neighborhood, and try to notice every time you hear a bird sing, or the style of the window dressings in your neighborhood, or how many people have their mailbox at the end of their driveway versus on their whatever. You get what I'm saying. You don't have to necessarily have your breath be the thing you're focusing on. And I think that expanding our perception as to what is a mindfulness practice can lower the bar to entry and make it seem easier to engage with. So starting a mindfulness practice of any sort can help to deepen your ability to notice things, to notice when you're feeling a certain way, to notice, today I'm experiencing a lot more anxiety, and think about what was different than the day before. Oh yes, I stayed up till 1 a.m. watching TV. Maybe that is related to how I'm feeling today. So the gist of this video is to say, I want you to use your diagnosis as a jumping off point for you. I want you to move through the period of grief, to move through that period of why me and what do I do now. Reach out for help, look for experts online if you can't find them in your local community. Get a second opinion if you feel like the person that you're working with, whether they be a family doctor, gynecologist, naturopath, whoever, if you feel like they don't know clearly or very much about PCOS, look for a second opinion. And I want you to use this as an opportunity to engage more deeply with yourself, to pay closer attention to how you're feeling, and then use that to inform the things that you do in your life. That, start with that, and we'll go from there. It's not easy to make changes. It's not easy to develop new habits, but if you can start with the practice of noticing how you're feeling, of making a note, starting some form of tracking, it's a really great place to begin. That's all for now. If you want to subscribe, just click the button. I think is it over there? Maybe it's over there. It's in one of those spots. If you want to check out some of the free resources I have and downloads around PCOS, I'll link them up down below in the description. And that's all for now. Leave a comment if you have an idea for a video. Talk to you later.